Bun găsit la emisiunea Știință și Cunoaștere. În speranța că ați vizionat emisiunea de data trecută, doresc să vă reamintesc faptul că a sosit momentul să aflăm adevărul legat de lucrurile ascunse sau despre fața nevăzută a instituțiilor religioase. Am reușit să înregistrez în noaptea dintre 23 și 24 mai 2012 un set de 3 interviuri cu fostul consilier al Papei Ioan Paul al II-lea, teologul Miceal Ledwith, folosindu-mă de avantajele tehnologiei de internet. Cine este domnul Ledwith? Ei bine, într-unul din DVD-urile primite cu drepturi de difuzare la TVR Cluj, domnia sa menționează că în perioada anilor 80-90 a devenit președintele Comitetului Președinților Universităților Irlandeze și a fost membru al biroului guvernator al Conferinței Universităților Europei. Dar în tot acest rest timp, pe cât era de ocupat cu îndatoririle profesorale și administrative, Miceal Ledwith a continuat căutarea răspunsurilor la marile întrebări existențiale, deoarece nu existau nicăieri răspunsuri clare și definitive. În anul 1980 s-a produs un lucru extrem de important. Teologul Miceal Ledwith a fost numit membru al unui mic grup elitist de teologi din întreaga lume, numit Comisia Teologică Internațională. Această comisie era însărcinată cu sfătuirea episcopului Romei și a papei în chestiuni teologice. A ocupat această funcție timp de 3 trimestre separate, totalizând 17 ani. A acceptat această poziție cu maximă seriozitate și pentru aproape toată acea perioadă de timp, șeful comisiei a fost actualul papă, Benedict al XVI-lea, pe atunci cardinalul Joseph Ratzinger. Miceal Ledwith a devenit foarte conștient de faptul că Papa Ioan Paul al II-lea, pe care îl sfătuia, avea o responsabilitate enormă. Peste 1 miliard de catolici din întreaga lume depindeau de fiecare cuvânt al lui. Și cuvântul său era foarte respectat de multe alte școli religioase, fie ele creștine sau non-creștine. Perioada slujirii scaunului papal s-a încheiat în 1997, după care Ledwith a continuat să fie preocupat de răspunsurile la marile întrebări existențiale. În cele din urmă a ajuns la o serie de concluzii șocante și zguduitoare. Cu cel puțin un an înainte de a afla despre povestea și preocupările domnului Ledwith, am luat legătura cu profesorul și cercetătorul Adrian Pătruț, ale cărui preocupări diverse includ nu doar chimia și parapsihologia, ci, în primul rând, biologia, psihologia și religia, iar cartea sa, Știință, chimie, nanoclusteri, apărută în tiraj limitat în anul 2007 la editura Casa Cărții de Știință, evidențiază problematica complexă și delicată a științei versus religie. Cu ocazia unei întâlniri recente am înregistrat următoarea declarație a profesorului Adrian Pătruț.
Spiritualitatea se referă la experiențe sau trăiri personale nemijlocite ale unor persoane cu aptitudini speciale în dimensiuni care cel puțin aparent nu aparțin realității fizice. Aceste persoane, care sunt denumite mistici, șamani, maestri spirituali, sfinți, profeți, de exemplu, nu au nevoie de un loc special în care se desfășoară și de un anumit cadru pentru aceste experiențe care au un caracter strict personal și individual. Ele reprezintă practic o relație specială dintre om, dintre individ și univers. Deși are la fundamentele sale tocmai astfel de experiențe, religia se diferențiază net de spiritualitate. Ea este un sistem, un cadru organizat ierarhic, devenit practic o instituție de tip laică, ce oferă servicii spirituale recte religioase omului obișnuit. Religia organizată propune omului comun, pe care îl denumește credincios, un loc anume desemnat, fie el templu, biserică, moschee, sinagogă, persoane autorizate, preoți, rabini, imami și anumite practici, rugăciune, spovedanie, post, de exemplu, pentru a-i mijloci contactul cu acea divinitate pe care o susține, pentru a-i purifica sufletul și trupul, pentru a-l feri de cel rău și pentru a-l conduce spre mântuire. De fapt, mântuirea este obiectivul suprem al fiecărei, declarat al fiecărei religii. Religia este dogmatică, având la baza doctrinei sale una sau mai multe cărți sfinte, considerate a fi imoabile și infailibile. De aceea religia descurajează sistematic orice experiențe spirituale și revelații noi care ar putea afecta și încerca să modifice esența doctrinei pe care o susține. Stanislav Grof a comentat diferența dintre spiritualitate și religie în felul următor. Esența acestei deosebiri este probabil cea mai importantă sursă de neînțelegere privitoare la relația dintre știință și religie. Spiritualitatea se bazează pe experiențe directe în dimensiuni neobișnuite ale realității și nu necesită neapărat un loc special sau o persoană denumită oficial pentru a media contactul cu realitatea de ordin superior sau cu divinitatea. Ea implică un grad special de relație între om și cosmos și este în esență o problemă de ordin privat și de asemenea personal. Misticii își bazează convingerile pe experiențe proprii. Ei nu au nevoie de biserici sau temple. Teritoriul în care ei percep dimensiunile sacre, dacă doriți, ale existenței, sunt înseși trupurile lor. În locul preoților oficianți, ei au uneori nevoie de sprijinul unui grup de alți căutători sau de un îndrumător sau de un învățător, de exemplu un guru care este mai avansat pe calea evolutivă decât discipolul însuși. Cel mai virulent reprezentant al oamenilor de știință necredincioși, primul ateu intransigent este însuși Richard Dawkins, care a fost profesor la Universitatea din Oxford, care a fost denumit Rottweilerul lui Darwin. Poziția sa nu e doar una ateistă, ci este și una profund antireligioasă. Ea exprimă în anumite lucrări, cum sunt virusurile minții, The Viruses of the Mind sau The God Delusion, amăgia denumită Dumnezeu, tocmai aceste caracteristici anti-ateiste și antireligioase profunde. Dawkins afirmă răspicat: învățătura bisericii este rezultatul unei tulburări psihice. Deci interpretează toată această credință religioasă în termeni psihiatrici. Este o epidemie particulară care se răspândește asemenea unui virus. El consideră credințele religioase actuale, care sunt împotriva evidențelor rațiunii și împotriva evidențelor științifice, ca simptome specifice ale unor persoane care sunt infectate cu astfel de virusuri ale minții, care se propagă asemenea virusurilor biologice sau virusilor de calculator. Dawkins consideră convingerile religioase de paraziți mentali, reducând credința și pe Dumnezeu la simple virusuri religioase ale minții umane. Știința se află întotdeauna cu un pas înaintea societății, fiind principalul factor de dezvoltare și progres al acesteia. Pe de altă parte, biserica și instituțiile sale, dacă ne referim la lumea apuseană pentru a exprima rolul religiei, sunt în mod tradițional conservatoare și intolerante, ea opunându-se din principiu noului și progresului, pe care le recunosc doar după ce și-a făcut de mult timp efectele. Spunem că religia în esență este fundamentalistă și integristă. Astfel, apariția științei moderne în perioada statelor creștine încă premoderne a generat în esență reacții virulente la adresa ta din partea bisericii și la persecuțiile bine cunoscute pe care le-au suportat oamenii de știință pionieri din partea autorităților religioase care reprezentau statul oficial. Amintim doar Inchiziția cu binecunoscutul său rol purificator în acest sens, în care îi ardea pe oameni de pe rug pentru a le purifica trupul și mântui sufletul. Progresul științei, care modernizează lumea și pe care o transformă treptat, are nevoie de un cadru nou care să fie lipsit de constrângeri și de bariere religioase pentru a se putea exprima liber într-un mediu în care rațiunea și în care faptele predomină asupra superstițiilor, convingerilor și prejudecăților religioase. În perioada modernă, biserica mai are la dispoziție instrumente de represiune pentru a-și impune, cel puțin în lumea apusiană, astfel de instrumente de represiune pentru a-și impune punctul de vedere. Ea s-a păstrat parțial în lumea islamică, unde avem de-a face cu state religioase și nu cu state laice secularizate. Ea își poate susține, deci biserica ne referim, opinie doar prin forța cuvântului și cu argumente plauzibile, sau aparent plauzibile, însă pe acest teritoriu biserica a pierdut toate disputele sale cu știința. Cea mai celebră dispută dintre știință și religie, sau una dintre cele mai celebre, a avut loc în anul 1860 la sediul Societății Britanice pentru propagarea științei, care s-a desfășurat la Oxford. Ea a avut drept adversar sau partener de discuție înverșunată pe cunoscutul om de știință Charles Darwin, părintele evoluției biologice, și pe episcopul britanic Samuel Wilberforce, era episcop de Oxford. În disputele acestea, Darwin a fost apărat de către oameni de știință, cum sunt Thomas Huxley sau Joseph Hooker. Întrebat de episcopul de Wilberforce dacă descinde din maimuță din partea bunicii sau a bunicului, Huxley a replicat în termeni relativ puțin evlavioși: prefer să mă trag din maimuță decât dintr-un om instruit care își folosește bagajul și puterea de convingere în slujba unor idei preconcepute și a neadevărului. Dacă ne referim la o problemă actuală din România de astăzi, și anume la programa curriculară din învățământul românesc, ea consideră că orele de religie ar contribui la o dezvoltare mai armonioasă a personalității elevului și la o mai bună promovare a valorilor morale. În realitate însă, elevii și adolescenții care urmează ore de religie nu sunt mai buni, mai civilizați și mai morali decât predecesorii lor care nu au urmat astfel de ore, ci uneori chiar dimpotrivă. În școli continuă cu succes îndoctrinarea religioasă a elevilor, care se prezintă imaginea unei lumi revrăjite, în antiteză cu obiectivul declarat al științei, care a fost și care rămâne mereu dezvăluirea lumii, așa cum a afirmat Max Weber. Lecții de religie se ocupă prea puțin de aspecte morale în general, respectiv de probleme actuale ale elevilor în particular. Sălile de clasă și coridoarele din școli sunt pline de simboluri religioase, cruci, crucifixuri și mai ales icoane ortodoxe, multe dintre ele realizate chiar de către elevi care au impresia că pe această cale, de exemplu, pot lua note mari și pot obține alte avantaje printr-o grație divină.
Revenind la Miceal Ledwith, aș putea spune că domnia sa a ajuns aproximativ la aceleași concluzii, chiar dacă nu a abandonat în totalitate ideile religioase. Ledwith a avut acces la toate bibliotecile și cărțile de teologie din locurile unde l-a însoțit pe papă timp de 17 ani. Astfel, a putut compara toate scrierile teologice din cele mai importante arhive din lume pentru a afla care sunt motivele pentru care se cunoaște atât de puțin despre viața lui Isus, de ce extrem de puțini oameni au manifestat rezultatele spirituale menționate destul de succint în scrierile sacre. În minutele următoare, teologul Miceal Ledwith ne va vorbi despre conceptul numit Dumnezeul lipsurilor, apoi va face o scurtă trecere în revistă a originilor Vechiului și Noului Testament, cele 4 evanghelii, care de fapt nu au fost scrise de către cei ce se presupune că le aparțin, Ne va vorbi despre faptul că o mulțime de oameni educați ajung deseori la dogmatismul religios și spre final veți afla dezvăluirile cutremurătoare ale celui de-al treilea secret de la Fatima și ce anume se ascunde în sutele de kilometri de rafturi aparținând Bibliotecii Vaticanului. Hello and welcome again to our program Science and Knowledge here on TVR Cluj on episode 2 of our extended talk.
Hello, I know it's 21 minutes after 10 in Romania, p.m.
Oh, yeah.
You're missing your beauty sleep.
Oh, no problem. I only need 4 hours of sleep every night.
I have to talk to you about that sometime.
Yeah, no problem. This is only one of the many effects of the biological transformations I made.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I read your article. Believe me, I did. All 61 pages of it. Wonderful. Yeah.
I am very happy to meet you again, and this time to talk more about another aspect concerning science and religion. For example, one very interesting idea to start our talks with would be what you had called in your DVDs, the volume 1 of the DVD series, The God of the Gaps.
Well, I think, thank you. That's a really interesting question. In one of my DVDs, I talked about the God of the gaps. What did I mean by that? I mean, it's an insight into the way most of us, at least in the religious West, think about God. For a long time now, several centuries actually. If you examine the idea carefully, you will see we always put God into the realm of the mysterious, the inexplicable. So if I depict reality as a 360-degree circle, well, there are some things that I associate God with, and there's some things I associate other things with. In the beginning, everything was explained by God. Tsunamis, hurricanes, storms at sea, thunderbolts from above, bad weather, drought, everything was explained by God. Then, of course, we began to see that there were other explanations. If I get a disease, I do not regard it as being the work of a demon. It's probably caused by a virus or a microbe or a bacterium. Likewise, if, say, in this country we had recently the Hurricane Katrina, which destroyed the city of New Orleans on the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, we didn't say it was due to Poseidon, who controls the waves, or we didn't say it was due to Zeus, who was the god of thunderbolts. We said it was due to various other natural forces. So what happens in the progress of understanding and sophistication? You know, sophistication is a word you should often use if you're talking to people, because everyone wants to be sophisticated. So the sophisticated understanding of reality is that, you know, the Hurricane Katrina or some other natural phenomenon in Indonesia was not caused by Zeus or Poseidon. It was caused by meteorological factors that we can understand and can predict. So basically, what am I saying about the God of the gaps? I'm saying that as human knowledge develops and progresses, so does our understanding of God. Many years ago, I looked at the Old Testament, which is so important for all of the Western world's understanding of religious terms. And as you may or may not know, in the old days, around the time of Jesus, There was no such thing as a sequence of the books of the Old Testament, for example. How could you have a sequence if your scrolls, say of the 29 books of the Old Testament, were all in a box? The sequence was whatever one you took out first, right? But when books became, which were stapled or bound or tied or stitched at the cover, you had to have a sequence of books. So it was after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 under Titus. Total destruction. Not a stone left upon a stone, not even Herod's magnificent temple. The Jewish community were scattered to the four winds and seven seas. There was an utter break in continuity. There are no traditions from pre-70 to post-70 in Judaism in Jerusalem, none. So, here we have it, that we're now talking about what do we do with this particular situation? The whole understanding of Jesus, of course, and the whole understanding, therefore, of our understanding of the divine, which is inextricably now linked with the interpretation of Jesus, was radically changed. So, here we have a great conundrum posed to us for our contemplation. All of those wonderful, wonderful contemplations that we have are radically altered when we put them into an entirely new paradigm. And we see, that what was there at that stage is no longer there at this stage. And are we willing to see what happens then? The sequence of the Old Testament books was established after the destruction of Jerusalem. In the year 90, at a synod of rabbis up in northern Israel, at a place called Jamnia, they decided to order the books of the Old Testament in the sequence in which we know today. Genesis first, even though it's 2/3 of the way down in terms of age. But one time when I had probably, I suppose, please accept this for what it's worth, when I had nothing better to do, of course I could have had nothing better to do, I decided to look at the Old Testament in its actual chronology, not from Genesis, which is 2/3 of the way down, but in the books in terms of their age. What I noticed was that the vision or understanding of God varied enormously over that period of time. In the very early period, like the book of Exodus, for example, or Deuteronomy, God was seen as a supremely powerful being who had, wait for this, no respect for morality. None. I mean N-O-N-E. In Exodus 4, God met Moses on the road home and, quote unquote, tried to kill him, his great apostle to the Jewish nation. He tried to kill him for what? For some minor offense. What kind of God is this? Is this God the Creator? Or is it actually Jehovah of the Mesopotamian tablets? The son or grandson or grandnephew of Ninhursag, or Mami, the woman who genetically engineered the origins of our human race? Or are we ready to face that fact? Are we ready to face the consequences of our genetic origins 230,000 years ago in Mesopotamia as a slave race? and what that has put into our flesh. Or are we not? We're all divine beings. So our choices are paramount and respected. But remember the inexorable law of cause and effect in the universe. Whatever we choose will come back to us, to haunt us or to fill us with gratitude and joy.
What is the reason that many educated people also falls into the religion dogmatism?
Insecurity. Insecurity. Christian, I regard myself as, in some ways, very blessed. I mean, I had parents and I had family who were full 100% Catholic observances. And I applaud them for that. They gave me a wonderful upbringing. But I began to wonder, why these people, and I spoke to you earlier about how the scientific mind in our educational system in Europe was divided far too soon into specializations of scientific versus what we might largely call humanitarian endeavors. So why is the scientific mind so prone to fall into the religious mindset, which is the fourth disease of the mind in my DVDs? The reason is this. They've been too specialized. They've always gone into the Newtonian physics side of things. They have no way of comparing any system of thought or program of action from outside objectively because they have never been formed in that tradition. And everyone gets old. Everyone gets less supple. Everyone gets arthritis, rheumatism. Everyone gets lapses of memory. And everyone knows that soon I'm living in borrowed time. And it's going to come to an end. So what's in front of me? Do I just cease to exist? Or do the bonds of true love never die, but endure beyond the grave? These are the questions that plague even scientists. Even scientists. So why do scientists so frequently fall into this trap? I looked at a few pictures recently of a meeting of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, which is a Vatican organization meeting in Rome. And I saw a picture of Pope Benedict XVI, the present Pope, with whom I worked up close and personal for 16 of the 17 years that I worked on the International Theological Commission at the Vatican. I saw Pope Benedict, Joseph Ratzinger as he was then, blessing Stephen Hawking, the one, the paraplegic.
Yes, I know.
I don't know how Stephen Hawking reacted to that. Maybe he possibly thought, I know much more about reality than this individual who's blessing me in front of me. Why do scientists accept membership in an institution like the Pontifical, that's the Vatican Academy of Sciences? Of course they're flattered. It's a very prestigious organization. And far be it from me to say that I don't respect the Vatican in terms of its major accomplishments. I do. What I fervently would wish is more openness to the future, to the facts of reality. That's what I would wish. So I'm wondering what Stephen Hawking felt when Pope Benedict, on whose name be peace, was blessing him. Was it condescendence? Or was it love? Of course, we'll never know. But that is my problem with science versus religion, that scientists are basically, because of the radical separation between humanitarian endeavor and scientific hard brass nuts and bolts endeavor at such an early age, that scientists have been dehumanized. And they've even been dehumanized from their own endeavor, because they're so unwilling to accept that even they have turned into a religion with its own high priesthood, with its own dogmas, with its own excommunications, if you cross the line that might threaten the pension fund. Where is the openness? So I see religion and science as basically confrontational opposites to each other, challenging each other to reform. When they do, we'll have a wonderful world. Anyway, come back to me. What do you think? I'll have more coffee.
You said that when someone claims he abandoned his religion, in reality he is still kept in the religion frame without being aware of it.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. Yeah, we can all say that. I give an example. For example, if we, say 20 years after leaving our former religious observances framework, if we go back to a family reunion for a wedding or a baptism, or even though we don't believe in the religion, there is still this enormous pull being exerted upon me from the music, the familiar phrases, the rituals, the ceremony. This tells us really clearly that, our basic problem in spiritual evolution is not information or ideas up here. Our basic problem in spiritual evolution is that all these retrograde beliefs are now part of my DNA, my flesh, and have been way back to the time of the origins of our race. Now, people may say, and I know this up close and personal. People say to me, the case is hopeless. No, the case is not hopeless. It's complex and massive, but it's not hopeless. No, we can deal with this. And we can deal with it very expeditiously. But we cannot deal with it by denial, as we've learned, with any sphere of endeavor. We cannot deal with this problem by denial. We have to address it, have to realize that I have been filled maybe by the providence of God, with much more exalted ideas of one kind or another. Are those ideas going to go anywhere when in my quantum field for the last 250,000 years through my DNA, I have inherited negative beliefs that are controlling my perception, my behavior, my attitudes? No, we need to grow up. We need to realize that those things are there, and we need to devise methods of dealing with them which can deal with them very effectively. If I believe that, Jesus suffered and died for my sins, and I'm focusing all my effort on a crucifix on the wall, you're doing a great disservice to yourself. You're also doing a great disservice to Jesus. But how far are we from, realizing that, as opposed to someone hearing this DVD and saying, you're being inspired by the devil, when I'm being inspired by the truth. This is the great grief.
Yes, but where all these ideas came from? The idea of a guy walking on the clouds, or the universe is a happening, the idea that God is somewhere outside, the thinking mentality of a God like an enlarged human being. where all these ideas came from.
Oh, how many hours did you say you had? Look, when we look at the life of Jesus and all of the evidence we now have to hand, this is something. I was a specialist in this area. I went into university in 1960. I spent my entire life in university until I was 52 years old in 1994. I was studying these matters full time as my job. It was a great surprise to me, which is why I brought out my second DVD, How Jesus Became a Christ. And there's going to be a successor to that, much more, leading you on, if you accept that much more deep from there. I realized that the picture of Jesus we had all been sold was actually not factual. Like, for example, how much about Jesus do we know from the New Testament, the four Gospels? No, what are we? We're in the year 2012 here. Do you remember a time, a significant time, say like the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963? How long ago is that? 63? Oh, 50 years almost.
Yeah.
The earliest of the Gospels attesting to the life of Jesus were written approximately at that time after the life of Jesus. Furthermore, fasten your seatbelts. There isn't a word in the four Gospels of the New Testament written by anyone who knew Jesus personally. So if we were setting out to write about someone whom we didn't know personally, that much time into the future, what could we expect? I'm not downgrading the Gospels of the New Testament. They're wonderful documents. But I'm saying none of them ever knew Jesus personally. And they were all written at least as far away from Jesus' passion as the assassination of John F. Kennedy is to you and me today. Okay, are we getting the picture? So this is what we have to come up and confront. Have we got the vera doctrina, as they say in Latin? Have we got the real stuff here? Or have we got a doctored version? Well, I say to you, on the basis of my research, we've got a doctored version. What do we hear in the New Testament about Jesus? We hear a couple of days when he was born, and it's suspiciously very much in line with the dying and resurrected saviors, of the first couple of centuries. All born in a stable, all born 25th of December, etc., etc. Am I taking Jesus out of your life? Oh, no, my God, I'm putting it into it, I hope. We hear a couple of days at his birth. We hear they went to Egypt for 2 years, was actually 8 years. We hear of a couple of days in the temple when they were 12, presumably for the bar mitzvah of Jesus and his twin brother Thomas. And for the next 18 years, we hear not a jot. Does that mean that Jesus went down to Nazareth and worked in Joseph's carpenter's shop, making bird seeds and bird feeders and garden benches and the like? If so, we should all change jobs immediately. Because after that 18-year apprenticeship in Nazareth, allegedly, he came out healing the sick, walking on water, raising the dead, and manifesting stuff out of thin air. Is that what happened? Of course it's not what happened. He went to the east at the age of 12 with a caravan, looking for the great masters who would do all these wonders they'd heard of, the wonders I've just mentioned. They wanted to find someone to teach them this knowledge and to understand, much more importantly than being able to do these things, they wanted to understand what lay behind it all about the understanding of reality. So Jesus spent 6 years with his twin brother, and then he went on from the west coast of India to the east coast of India. And from there he went up north. His twin brother went home in disgust, because all they met were pompous gurus who wanted to be served and revered, and taught them nothing about the great work. So Jesus went up from the east coast of India, up past the birthplace of Buddha Gautama, Kapalivastu, on up into Nepal and into Tibet. There he did meet the real masters, and they did teach him the secrets about reality and how to control matters from the quantum field, which is the 5th level of the 7 levels of frequency. That's how you heal the sick, raise the dead. It's not a miracle. It's just a mark of emergence out of ignorance. And at the age of 26, he left the highlands and came back to Israel to exercise his, what would I call it? His project.
Now, I'd like to speak about a different subject. For example, I don't know if you heard about the 3rd letter of Fatima. Is this manuscript real? And if it does, can you tell us what the public had not been told until now?
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. I met Sister Lucia, who was the last surviving visionary of Our Lady, as I said, the Mother of Jesus, at Fatima in 1917, on May 13, 1917, with John Paul II. I met him in Castel Gandolfo, not in the Vatican, in, I think it was October of, I have to check the dates, but October, I think, of 1980 or 81, after his assassination attempt in the square, which was on the anniversary of the Vision of Fatima, 13th of May, 1917. Pope John Paul was shot 5 times by that Turkish terrorist, but he knew it was coming. I mean, I know this from personal conversations with the Pope. And he went to see an individual in Italy when he was a student as a priest in Rome, called Padre Pio. You may have heard of Padre Pio.
Yes.
He went down. I mean, I do have a great regard for Pope John Paul II. I do. I mean, I worked with him for 17 years. I do have a tremendous regard for him. But he went when he was a student priest in Rome to visit Padre Pio down in Italy. I never met Padre Pio. And he was dressed out in his very best. I know we're short of time, but maybe sometimes the irrelevant is more important. He was dressed, John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła at that time, was dressed in his best cassock, you know, that garment that goes from down to the ground. And he got off the bus or the train where Padre Pio was. It was a very wet season in Italy. The Pope, the future Pope, fell flat on his face in the mud. There was no place to change, there was nothing. He just wiped himself off and went in to visit Padre Pio. But anyway, that's, you know, the mud is not important. What is important? I know this for a fact. Padre Pio told him that day that he would be Pope. He told him 2 things in addition to this. Number 1, that there would be an assassination attempt on him. And I think he gave him the date. It would be on the 13th of May, the anniversary of Fatima. And he told him he would survive. He told him also that there would be a second attempt on his life, which would succeed. Well, now, of course, I met Pope John Paul in October of 1980 in Castel Gandolfo outside of Rome. He had a plastic nail on this finger of his left hand. We were the first group he ever met after the recovery. But he knew this was coming. I know this from conversations with him. He also took the bullet, one of the 4 bullets, and he brought it to Fatima himself and placed it in the crown of the statue of the Mother of Jesus at Fatima to thank her for the intervention. And I know from being in his private chapel in the Vatican multitude of times, he had this icon of Our Lady of the Mother of Jesus in his own private chapel. So now, coming back to Lucy, I was at a meeting of the European University Presidents in Lisbon, in Portugal, in 1990. We went up to Coimbra, north of Lisbon, on a visit. The one reason I really wanted to go to Coimbra is that the 3rd visionary and last surviving member of the 3 children who saw allegedly the Mother of Jesus in 1917 was there in a convent, Lucia. I went to the convent. I celebrated Mass in her convent. She was present. But anyway, look, we have 5 minutes. Anyway, praise God, we have 5 minutes to deal with the profundities of the universe. There is a 3rd secret of Fatima. The 2 were revealed. The 3rd was supposed to be revealed by 1960. Now, 2 people with whom I worked, 3 people in fact, with whom I worked, I have to say, conspired to conceal the 3rd secret. Will I name those names? Yes, I will. At that time, it was Cardinal Sodano, Secretary of State of the Vatican. Number 2, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, under which I worked, now Pope. And the 3rd was Cardinal Tarcisius Bertone, Subsecretary of the Congregation. They conspired to conceal the 3rd secret, which was on 1 page in Portuguese. Malachi Martin will testify to how he sat outside the Pope's apartment while inside they were trying to decipher, with the help of a couple of Portuguese seminarians, the translation of the original Secret of Fatima. So, in the year 2000 and subsequently, there was a conspiracy between the present Pope, the then Secretary of State, and Cardinal Bertone, who is now Archbishop of Genoa, I think, all of whom I worked with the exception of the Secretary of State, to release a different version of the secret. What was the secret? The secret was that the church would become corrupt from the top down. And that the Pope would have much to suffer. And that the number of popes was very limited.
Yes, I heard some talks about.
Cardinal Ratzinger, as he then was, now Pope, said those who are expecting some apocalyptic revelation for our time are going to be disappointed with the 3rd secret of Fatima. It's nothing other than the faithful already know. It's not true. No. It's talking about enormous changes in our time, about the church, which of course is not advantageous for the church to reveal. But basically, coming back to your question, as we have probably 2 or 3 minutes left, the 3rd secret of Fatima is real. Was it exposed in its true form whenever it was, 2000? No. Is it encouraging for our time? No. But, Lucy is now dead. She died, I think, in 2007. So we leave it in the hands of Providence, but I think it's nothing more obvious than we all know. I think most of the alleged apparitions, I'm going to close on this because I know you've only 2 minutes left. Most of the alleged appearances of the mother of Jesus, whoever they were not the mother of Jesus. I was in Medjugorje, the most famous site of the apparitions of the alleged mother of Jesus, on a mission on the anniversary of those apparitions in 1987 in Yugoslavia, a neighbor to you. In the Soviet days, I went there. It was the anniversary of the apparitions, 24th of June. I was in 1987, so several years later from the originals, but there were over 60,000 people in the square that day. The apparitions took place in a room in the priest's house. Because of who I was allowed to go in. I was between the visionaries at that time, during that apparition. I can testify to you that when the apparition occurred, they were totally oblivious to anything that happened around them. I didn't do this, but some people did this. They stuck pins into them and they showed no reaction. So something is going on there. And I extrapolate from my visit and my interviews with those various people in Medjugorje in old Yugoslavia in those days, now Bosnia-Herzegovina, extrapolate to one time out on the open hillside when the vision said to people, come forward and touch the apparition. And several people did. They went forward and they put their hands on something and they felt, quote unquote, this is not my invention, it's a quotation from the people who did. They felt something metallic in midair. They could see nothing.
Is there anything special that you had read or seen in the Vatican Library, mainly in the sections with restricted public access?
Listen, the Vatican secret archive especially is enormous. It's a priceless heritage. But I often say to people here, it's like my garage. Christian, you've never seen my garage. If you have, you would see what the Vatican Secret Archive is like. You know, many years ago, I built a university library when I was president of the University of Maynooth. So I know something about libraries. I said to someone in the Vatican library system, you know, it's all about levels, and the person at the top is not really at the top, they're just a figurehead, right? I said, you know, if we could catalog the Vatican Secret Archive. Now, yeah, some of you might have seen the movie here in this country, Angels and Demons by Dan Brown, which was actually earlier than the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Angels and Demons one shows you this hermetically sealed, you know, absolutely preserved domain when you go into the Vatican Secret Archive with doors opening out. No, give me a break. This is not what's there. I mean, there's over 150 miles of shelves in the Vatican Archive.
And they are all underground, 150 miles?
It's not underground. No, it's not underground. Who said underground? No one ever said that. It's in the Vatican. I mean, it's overground, underground, wherever the storage space is available. But you have to remember, there have been many invasions of what's now the Vatican. The Normans were there, you know, in the 12th century. Napoleon Bonaparte was there in the late 1700s, early 1800s. He brought the whole Vatican secret archive to Paris on the backs of donkeys. And not all of it came back after the Congress of Vienna. So what's the Vatican secret archive look? Does it look like Dan Brown's ancient leaves? No, it looks like my garage. It looks like my garage. So I said to this person one day in Rome, I usually came there for a week at a time. Look, I said, should we catalog this whole collection? You know, I will find the resources to do this. We'd have to find a couple of people who can read the languages of those archives. Medieval French, German, Spanish, Italian, obviously, and English. And also the classical language of classical Greek and Rome and Latin. After a week, we came back. I was very busy with my other work, and I said, I found out that the catalog, you know, it's all bundles of material on shelves or window faces or whatever. I said, I found I would take a little over a century to catalog it. I heard no more. But now, you know, that's 25 years ago. We would be already a quarter of the way through. But however, that's not the focus of your question. I'm just giving you a realistic insight into the state of the so-called Vatican Secret Archive and all the wonderful stuff that's in there. Look, I'm saying to you, what does it matter what's in there? Nobody is using it. Nobody is using it. Nobody is using it. What does information matter if nobody's taking it up? So, is there some colossus secret being held in the Vatican Secret Archive? I don't know. Neither does anyone else.
I thank you greatly, Miceal, for this very interesting discussion in which we discovered things that very few people on this world knows about.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, everyone who's watching. And let it go forth.
Am vrut să vorbim despre multe alte subiecte, dar în timpul sesiunii de înregistrări, care a avut loc pe durata a 4 ore în miezul nopții dinspre 23 spre 24 mai 2012, legătura pe internet a devenit instabilă și nu am mai putut recupera anumite fragmente. L-am întrebat pe profesorul Ledwith ce crede despre lumina care apare în mormântul de la Ierusalim în ziua Paștelui. Mi-a răspuns că aceasta se datorează unui arhetip cu acțiune asupra mentalului colectiv care în acele momente determină acțiunea unor legi speciale. Vorbindu-ne deseori despre gena religiei, personal sunt de părere că într-un anume fel el a reușit să-și o inactiveze și astfel, pe baza numeroaselor experiențe de viață și a cunoașterii științifice, Miceal Ledwith are o nouă viziune asupra vieții și universului, care, deși nu e lipsită în totalitate de componenta religioasă, aceasta extinde foarte mult domeniul de înțelegere și ne aduce un nou model pe care biserica nu îl poate accepta. Data viitoare, la Știință și Cunoaștere, vom continua difuzarea celui de-al 3-lea interviu realizat pe internet cu teologul Miceal Ledwith, în care domnia sa ne va vorbi despre mentalitatea modernă a universului în formă de hamburger, originile religiei, calendarul maiaș și așa numita Apocalipsă după Ioan, care, în opinia domniei sale, ar fi un manual de dezvoltare personală. Lucruri uimitoare, inedite și fascinante numai la Știință și Cunoaștere. Nu scăpați aceste ediții speciale în care veți afla tot ceea ce biserica nu v-a spus până acum. Emisiunea se reia luni dimineața la ora 11.